I
live.
didn't do all my, let's see, save project, not full circle. It's in mintCast. And this is 445.
Yeah.
AP445-MOS.
Yeah, I put on a shirt so Majid doesn't feel so intimidated.
Don't worry, I'm intimidated already.
Just remember, he's got the anesthesia. If he needs to put you down, he can.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
I was gonna say. All right, let's treatment date. God, I hate private healthcare providers, man. What a bunch of twats they are.
I cannot agree more.
And
Said the American.
I just learned, you know how I'm getting this 100 up and down for $65 a month? I heard the commercial, and they're actually pushing gig internet for $69.95. So for less than $5 more, I could have 10 times the speed.
Yeah. Well, right now I'm at 300 for 55, so
I would be quite happy with that. I would be quite happy at 100 for 35. But 65 is ridiculous.
I gotta call AT&T again and see if they'll give me a veterans discount.
But I can't really bargain with this ISP because it's brand new. They only have 60,000 customers right now, and they've only built up about a third of their infrastructure.
It took forever for fiber to get to my house.
Yeah. Well, this is from the Knoxville Utilities Board, which buys their energy directly from the TVA project. So we had cheaper electric than most places. They also manage the water for a good part of their area, but not the area I'm in. And they said, hey, why don't we start a fiber network?
Has everybody chosen which news articles they want to
do?
do?
Oh, no, I keep forgetting to do that.
I've put a couple down.
There's news articles?
Hope you didn't take mine.
I've taken a couple. I'm more than happy to change.
Pause due to critical bug.
You want me to do that one?
Yeah, you're going to... well, I guess I'll take Linus.
4M Linux 46 Mini Linux distro release.
See, I played with 4M Linux a few times, so I like that one, but...
Take it.
Okay.
And I will take the stealthy ZXP Linux malware.
Okay. Well, I did not add any more news articles because our next show is going to still need news articles.
I added one.
Shame on you.
Well, no, just because I
undercutting me.
No, just because it's actually a week old anyway, so I just thought it was worth putting it on.
Which one was that, Majid?
The 2404.1 release has been pulled.
Okay. They already had to call that back and redo it. They found a big, massive gap in some of their 22041 stuff and had to redo it.
Give me 2 seconds. Back in a sec.
Okay, so I guess Eric's not here.
He's coming. He said he's coming.
He is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He said he's on his way.
Well, he doesn't have anything to do now.
Well, he can take a couple. He can take mine. give me a chance to verify work stuff. What the hell?
Well, I'm all ready to go on Audacity whenever we're ready to start, which we're not.
Hold on.
Back up to the top of the page. I did some editing. I think I got most things.
Test. Okay. Now I'm on the right microphone, which is nice.
Oh, good. Good, yes.
Can hear a lot of background noise for what it's worth.
Oh,
Yeah,
there's an Eric.
you
Hi,
can
Eric.
hear a lot of background noise, but it is easy to pull out of Audacity, and it won't be on the stream because I fixed it in OBS.
Okay. Sounds good.
He's
So,
in Texas. He's got to stay cool.
yeah, I've got a fan. It's got to stay on or I'm going to die, and I'm working.
Don't die.
Not from heat stroke, anyway.
So hopefully we can get this show done before they call Joe into work.
I'm literally working right now. I would show you my screen, but there's private data on there.
Well, I'm only certified for corporate data. That came out totally wrong because my tongue isn't working. I was going to say corporal data, therefore private data is beneath me.
Makes sense to me.
How are you feeling today, Eric?
About the same. So yeah.
You look pretty much like the bus ran over you a few times.
Yeah, they backed up. They hit me and then they backed up and came for me again. And
Well, they've got to do their backups, you know?
yeah.
Hey, man, how you doing?
Hey,
You just
hanging
answered
in
that.
there.
Yeah. It was a good show yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
They
went quite
usually
well.
are. I mean, I've only had maybe one or two where I kind of thought, maybe not the most exciting thing in the world, but no, we do pretty well, I think.
Okay, everyone ready on Audacity yet?
Yep.
Eric?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, we don't have to start the show, but we have to get Audacity going. So we
All
can
right. Over to Moss for the ones, the twos, and the threes.
Okay. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Record. Looks like 25 to me. Zeros. 3, 2, 1.
Zero.
Zero.
Close.
Excellente. All right, then.
All right. I will no
is it-
longer look at my Audacity.
Is the stream on?
Yes, it is. Has anybody verified the audio on the stream? Can't be me that
No.
does it.
All right, hold on 1 second. I'll do that. Yes, the audio's going.
Okay.
Brilliant. All right, then. So, I suppose we better get started, really, isn't it? Welcome to mintCast, the podcast by the Linux Mint community for all users of Linux. This is episode 445. This is episode 445.5, recorded on Sunday, September 8th, 2024.
Working while working. I'm Joe.
Recharged and redrained. I'm Moss.
God save the king. I'm Majid.
And I forgot to put something in. This is Eric.
Please remember, if you want to follow along with our discussions, the full show notes for this episode are linked in the show description. So, first up in the news, we've got Kite OS Educational Linux developed in Kerala, India. Microsoft rolls out Windows Recall again. Linus regrets merging Bcache FS again. 4M Linux 46 released. In security and privacy, something has gone seriously wrong. Dual boot systems warn after Microsoft update. ZXP Linux malware avoids detection for 2 years. Then, in our wanderings, I'm back from my travels from India. Bill isn't here. Moss is Moss. Joe is allegedly working, and Eric gets his pine time. In our inlet sections, we talk a bit about wearables, and finally a bit of feedback and a couple of suggestions. So, the news. So, Kite develops a FOSS-based OS for public schools. So this is from the Hindu newspaper. Kerala Infrastructure and Technology for Education, or KITE, has completed the development of a new free and open source FOSS-based operating system suite, KITE GNU Linux 2204, that can be used in 3 lakh, so that's 300,000 computers available in public schools in the state. The distro can be used as a complete computing platform not only for ICT learning in schools but also by students, teachers, and on computers used in homes, government offices, DTP centers, etc., etc., etc. The new version of the OS has been developed using the Wayland system instead of the Xorg window mechanism currently used in operating systems in school. A customized version of popular FOSS OS Ubuntu. It also includes applications such as gCompress, Tux Paint, PictoBlocks, Traffic Game, Waste Challenge, OmniTux, Edu, Activate, GeoGebra, LibreOffice, Scratch, and Krita. Given that artificial intelligence has been included in the Information Computer Technology textbook from Class 8, so that's basically high school, from this year, the distro includes tools to understand the basic concepts related to AI, machine learning, computer vision, and more. The new OS also features elaborate systems for Malayalam computing. So Malayalam is the language that is spoken in Kerala and is the state language. It also has an ebook reader, desktop publishing software, graphics, image editing software, sound recording, etc. The stuff that you need, really. The Institute has equipped schools with laptops that utilize entirely free software, replacing the previously licensed software used for courses in higher secondary schools and national skills qualification framework job roles in vocational higher secondary in the public education sector. This has resulted in a saving of 3,000 crores. So let me figure that out. That is about 3 billion rupees from 200,000 computers. Kite will provide training to all school IT coordinators in installing the new OS in all computers on schools, the Kite Chief Executive Officer said. The new OS suite can actually be downloaded for free from the download link on the Kite website, which is in the show notes. And the Minister for General Education, V. Sivankutty, will launch the new OS suite at the inaugural session of Little Kite State Camp at the Kite's Regional Resource Centre in Ernakulam at 10:30 a.m. on Friday. I think that was last Friday, not for last Friday, Friday before. So I added this in because I thought this was a win for free and open source. India is a place where everything is very price sensitive, and if they can save a whole lot of money, then I think they'll do that. Kerala also has, it's probably one of the most left-wing states in India. It was the first actually, it was the first governmental unit ever to freely elect a communist party as its government in 1964. So that's a so it kind of goes that this is their kind of philosophy, and so I think it's a good thing. It's also interesting because we were talking yesterday on Linux OTC about how the Linux user numbers have again increased, and a lot of that is supposed to be driven from India. So yeah, I thought this was a good news story. Go on, Eric. Your turn next. Unless anybody's
All
got
right.
anything to say.
No,
Take that as a
I
no.
agree with you. I think it was a good story. Yeah. All right, so upgrades to Ubuntu 2404 LTS paused due to critical bug. This is from OMG Ubuntu. Last week, the first point release of Ubuntu 2404 LTS arrived, and upgrades from Ubuntu 2204 LTS to the newest one officially enabled. However, those upgrades didn't go smoothly for everyone who tried, be it on Ubuntu server or the desktop. To prevent further headaches, Canonical has decided to pause upgrades to Ubuntu 2404 LTS from Ubuntu 2204 LTS while its developers work out the kinks. Yesterday, the Noble release got edited out of the meta release LTS file, which Ubuntu systems check to detect new versions, and that's when it'll prompt you for an upgrade, preventing users from upgrading to Ubuntu 2404.1 LTS through officially supported methods. Folks attempting to upgrade but suddenly finding they couldn't were left wondering why. In reply, Canonical explains that it halted upgrades due to a critical bug in Ubuntu Release Upgrader in the way it's using the apt solver, though other recurring issues have been reported on Launchpad and mentioned on social media in the past week. Of course, issues ought to be expected in any major OS upgrade, especially from LTS to LTS transitions, as upgrading an extensive foundation stack that's 2 years old is far from trivial. Even the most attentive testing prior to release won't uncover every edge case calamity in time. Plus, this isn't the first time Noble updates or upgrades have caused issues. When Ubuntu 2404 LTS was released in April, users on Ubuntu 2310 were able to upgrade but later advised not to due to critical bugs, which was unrelated to this one. Developers are now working to resolve the issue causing LT to LTS upgrades to fail for some users, but until those fixes are ready, upgrades will remain paused. Upgrades to Ubuntu 2404 LTS from 2204 will be re-enabled once everything is out, in place, and deemed stable enough. Still, once those upgrades are re-enabled, I'd recommend anyone planning on making the leap to keep some recovery media like a bootable Ubuntu installer on a USB drive in hand just in case. So that makes sense. I don't know. I know a lot of people like to jump pretty quickly between releases, but I will usually wait for that .1, which in this case, as they mentioned, is when you would get prompted by the updater system to upgrade between releases. But even then, sometimes, if you have something that's mission critical, you have to be a little more deterministic, a little more intentional about upgrading, especially a mission critical system. So if there's problems, I'm glad, that they disabled the automatic aspect of this. And I kind of trust that they will, do the right testing. And I mean, Ubuntu's usually pretty good about that.
I mean,
Well, even
what
so, the
worries me?
2204 users have been waiting since April to do an upgrade.
Yeah,
And the
see,
fact that
what
they haven't
worries
got it
me,
done yet,
what worries me about this whole thing is that the whole release has been a bit of a dumpster fire in the sense of, do you remember, initially there wasn't even a way of updating. There was problems. I remember Popey talking about those problems, and it was completely nuking people's systems if they upgraded. And now, what I remember at the time, a lot of us said the same thing. Like Moss has just said, "Oh, wait till the point release comes out, and before doing an update." Well, now those people have waited for the point release to come out, and again, there's been problems. Now, obviously, I'm not going to say that this is an easy thing, but I'm just wondering: is there some technical reason that this has happened this time around? Because I've not remembered a release of an LTS having this many issues. Now that
I
might be just something.
remember, Majid, when 1804 came out, it was a mess to upgrade from 1604 because there were too many new things that didn't work the same and had different dependencies. And I do not know why that happened, but it happened. So this has happened to Ubuntu in the past.
I mean, wasn't 1804 when they made the switch from Unity to GNOME 3 or GNOME Shell?
No, I think that was 16.
Okay, go.
I was using 16, and I had a machine that wouldn't run Unity, and but when they switched to Unity on 12, I couldn't use it, and so I had to switch to something else.
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously, the advice given in the article is, what you need to do really, and it's a bit disappointing, but it's at least the issues have been found and something's been done to try and fix it. So that's good. Okay.
Well, considering everyone that we know that was working for Canonical is no longer working for them, that might be the problem.
Yeah, I mean that did occur to me actually, but then I don't know how these companies work when it comes to hiring and firing, so I thought I'd keep a dignified silence on that one. Okay, moving on to not so great news. Microsoft will try the data scraping Windows recall feature again in October. Big sigh. So this is from Ars Technica. Microsoft will begin sending a revised version of its controversial recall feature to Windows Insider PCs beginning in October, according to an update published today in the company's original blog post about the recall controversy. The company didn't elaborate further on specific changes it's making to recall beyond what it's already announced in June. For those who don't know, Recall is a Windows service that runs in the background on compatible PCs, continuously taking screenshots of user activity, scanning those screenshots with optical character recognition, and saving the OCR text and screenshots to a giant searchable database on your PC. The goal, according to Microsoft, is to help users retrace their steps and dig up information about things that they had used their PCs to find or do in the past. The problem was that the other users on the same PC or attackers with physical or remote access to your PC could easily view, access, and export those screenshots and OCR database since none of the information was encrypted, at rest, or protected in any substantive way. Microsoft had planned to launch Recall as one of the flagship features of its Copilot Plus PCs in the launch in July, along with the new Qualcomm Snapdragon powered service devices. But its rollout was bumped back and then paused entirely, so that Recall could be reworked and then sent out to Windows insiders for testing, like most other Windows features are. Among the changes Microsoft has said it will make, the database will be encrypted at rest and will require authentication and periodic re-authentication with Windows Hello before users will be allowed to access it. The feature will also be off by default, whereas the original plan was to have it on by default and make users go in the settings to turn it off. Security continues to be our top priority, and when Recall is available for Windows Insiders in October, we will publish a blog with more details, reads today's updates to the Microsoft Windows and Devices Corporate Vice President Pavan Davleri's blog post. When the preview is released, Windows insiders who want to test the Recall preview will need to do it on a PC that meets Microsoft's Copilot Plus system requirements. These include a processor with an NPU capable of at least 50 trillion operations per second, or TOPS, 16 gig of RAM, 256 gigs of storage. The x86 builds of Windows for Intel and AMD processors don't currently support any Copilot Plus features, regardless of whether the PC meets those requirements. But that should change later in the year. That said, security researchers and reporters who found the holes in the original version of Recall could only find them because it was possible to enable them on unsupported PCs, just as it's possible to run Windows 11 on PCs that don't meet the system requirements. It's possible that users will figure out how to get Recall and other Copilot features running on unsupported PCs at some point too.
Like they really want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want a unsupported, unencrypted database sitting on my system that tells Windows every damn thing I've been doing. Isn't that the same thing as a keylogger?
Yeah. I mean, uh, as a feature, I can see
Isn't
that some people will find utility in this. It's just it does it does boggle the mind though that they sent it out so half baked, really, and they're not selling it, I must say, by doing now the basics of security stuff on it. If
How
you
is
want
this
it, it's there.
unusual for Microsoft?
Yeah, fair point. Fair point. Fair point.
isn't running Microsoft basically giving them all this data anyway? This is just making it accessible to everybody else.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's democratizing access to your data. Yeah. You're muted, Eric.
Are we waiting for something?
We're waiting for Eric because Eric was
Oh,
making an interesting point, I think, but I can't hear him.
All I'm hearing is dead air, and we don't want dead air on this show.
Okay. Well, whilst Eric sorts out his technical issues, Moss, you're next.
Okay. Linus Torvalds begins expressing regrets merging Bcache FS. This is from Phoronix. There's been some Friday night kernel drama on the Linux kernel mailing list. Linus Torvalds has expressed regrets for merging the Bcache FS file system and an ensuing back and forth between the file system maintainer. On Friday, a set of fixes were submitted for merging into the current Linux 6.11 cycle. There were little fixes plus two big quote fixes end quote around a R hash table conversion and a new data structure for managing free lists in the B-tree key cache. That later one eliminates the B-tree key cache lock and avoids some locking contention that can appear in some multi-threaded workloads. But this quote fix quote fixes these quote fixes end quote pull request touches more than 1,000 lines of code, and we're now more than halfway through the Linux 6.11 cycle. This is far from the first time that big fixes pulls for Bcache FS have been submitted post-merge window, and not the first time that it's not strictly bug fixes, but also heavier, more feature-like additions being made via fixes pull requests. Linus Torvalds had enough and responded to the pull request. Quote, yeah, no, enough is enough. The last poll was already big. This is too big. It touches some non-Bcache FS stuff, and it's not even remotely some kind of regression. At some point, quote, fix something, end quote, just turns into development, and this is that point. Nobody sane uses Bcache FS and expects it to be stable, so every single user is an experimental site. The Bcache FS patches have become these kinds of, quote, lots of development during the release cycles rather than before it, end quote, to the point where I'm starting to regret merging Bcache FS. If Bcache FS can't work sanely within the normal upstream kernel release schedule, maybe it shouldn't be in the normal upstream kernel. This is getting beyond ridiculous, close quote. To which Kent responded and argued that, quote, Bcache FS is definitely more trustworthy than Btrfs, and quote, I'm working to make it more robust and reliable than XFS and ext4, and yes, it will be, with end-to-end data integrity, end quote, and other passionate commentary. Torvalds then countered that there still aren't any major Linux distributions using Bcache FS. Linux kernel release rules should be followed, and the chances of new bugs coming up from the 1,000 plus line patches of fixes. There were several back and forth Friday night comments on the Linux kernel mailing list. The Bcache FS fixes poll wasn't polled, and no revised poll requests strictly limiting the changes to pure bug fixes have yet been submitted.
Well, at least he's not cussing him out.
Yeah, he's turned over a new leaf, right?
He's got that filter in place.
Yeah.
Well,
Isn't that
at
what they
least-
wanted him to do all those years ago, to have that filter?
No, they wanted him to go to therapy, but he decided to create a filter instead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, at least the filter's working.
I think he wants to filter out Bcache FS. Anyone using it?
Nope.
No.
And there you have it. Thousands of lines of code being changed over something that nobody's using.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting what you said that it's more trustworthy than Btrfs. Not that I've used Btrfs much either, but
It's funny when people throw those shots out, and I don't disagree that, Butterfest has had its problems, but given that there are several distributions that are using it as the default, and seemingly, I've run it for a while on some systems and haven't had major issues, so I don't know. I think there are ample uses for lots of different technologies. There are people that just go crazy over ZFS and all these different things that I have no interest in, but I think, if somebody thinks Vcache is interesting, great. If they can get their act together and not do dumb things. Like, that's a pretty common software practice. You go through a freeze. You don't just keep changing things whenever there's an impending release. This isn't like a Linux only thing. That's just basic software development. So, yeah.
I love the fact that you called it ZFS.
I did that for you, yeah.
Yeah,
He's been
thanks.
listening to you long.
Yeah, that's what it is, isn't it?
Okay. 4M Linux 46 Mini Linux distro released with new apps, integrated LAMP server. This is from 9 to 5 Linux. 4M Linux developer Zbigniew Konajaki announced today the release and general availability of 4M Linux 46 as the latest stable version of this mini Linux distribution featuring the lightweight JWM window manager. 4M Linux 46 is here more than 5 months after 4M Linux 45 to integrate the 4M Server Edition into the main 4M Linux edition, allowing users to set a very lightweight HTTP/FTP server based on BusyBox, Apache, MariaDB, PHP, Perl, Python, and Ruby technologies without having to download a separate ISO image. Powered by the Linux 6.6 LTS kernel and Mesa 24.0.4 graphics stack, this release also introduces new features like support for raw image files from digital cameras, CRW/CR2, NEF, RAF, DNG, support for Windows Enhanced Meta files, EMF images, and support for new apps, including DVD Author, VCD Imager, and QV4i2. It also improves support for old audio formats originating from Amiga, Commodore, and similar platforms, adds the classic GNU Go to the 4M Linux Game Pack downloadable package, and introduces support for the latest GTK4 toolkit to support modern apps. Updated default apps in 4M Linux 46 include LibreOffice 24.8, AbiWord 3.0.5, GIMP 2.10.38, GNUMeric 1.12.57, Mozilla Firefox 124.0, Google Chrome 128.0.6613.84, Mozilla Thunderbird 115.12.2, Audacious 4.4, VLC 3.0.21, SM Player 24.5.0, and Wine 9.12. You can download 4M Linux 46 as full and core editions from the distro's official website. 4M Linux is only available for 64-bit systems and uses the JWM, Joe's Window Manager, as the default graphical environment. Check out the release announcement page for more details about 4M Linux 46.
This looks like the kind of thing you would have used, Moss.
I've tried it a few times. I think I reviewed it on DistroHoppers once, maybe twice. Someone would have to check the notes on that because I'm not there anymore. I do miss it.
I mean, it seems like a good lightweight distro.
I'm
Well,
pretty
I
sure
like
they would take you
JWM.
back anytime you want to go.
Well, JWM is pretty much what they use in Puppy, and it works. It's nice and it looks really antiquated, but it works.
So on old hardware, might
Yeah,
well be
sure.
something very
I'm
interesting.
surprised that they're only doing 64-bit.
Yes, that's a good point.
Well, that's the news, it looks like.
Cool. So on to security and privacy. So Eric, I've nominated you for the first one.
Yeah, no problem. So, something has gone seriously wrong, is the quote that starts us off on dual boot systems worn after Microsoft update. So, last Tuesday, August 13th, loads of Linux users, many running packages released as early as this year, started reporting their devices were failing to boot. Instead, they received a cryptic error message that included the phrase, "Something has gone seriously wrong." I love that somebody wrote that. Somebody put that in the code. Um, we're not going to tell you what, but something. The cause, an update Microsoft issued as part of its monthly patch release. It was intended to close a 2-year-old vulnerability in Grub, an open source boot loader used to start up many Linux devices. The vulnerability, with a severity rating of 8.6 out of 10, made it possible for hackers to bypass Secure Boot, the industry standard for ensuring that devices running Windows or other operating systems don't load malicious firmware or software during the boot up process. CVE 2022-2601 was discovered in 2022, but for unclear reasons, Microsoft patched it only last Tuesday. Tuesday's update left dual boot devices, meaning those configured to run both Windows and Linux, no longer able to boot into the latter when Secure Boot was enforced. When users tried to load Linux, they received the message verifying shim sbat data failed, security policy violation, something has gone seriously wrong. SBAT self-check failed, security policy violation. Almost immediately, support and discussion forums lit up with reports of the failure. Note that Windows says this update won't apply to systems that dual boot Windows and Linux, one frustrated person wrote. This obviously isn't true and likely depends on your system configuration and the distribution being run. It appears to have made some Linux EFI shim bootloaders incompatible with microcrap EFI bootloaders. Microcrap? That's why shifting from MS EFI to other OS in EFI setup works. It appears that Mint has a shim version that MS-SBAT doesn't recognize. The reports indicate that multiple distributions, including Debian, Ubuntu, Linux, Mint, Zorin OS, and Puppy Linux, are all affected. Microsoft has yet to acknowledge the error publicly, explain how it wasn't detected during testing, or provide technical guidance to those affected. Company representatives didn't respond to an email seeking answers. Microsoft's bulletin for CVE 2022-2601 explained that the update would install an SBAT, a Linux mechanism for revoking various components in the boot path, but only on devices configured to run only Windows. That way, secure boot on Windows devices would no longer be vulnerable to attacks that loaded a grub package that exploited the vulnerability. Microsoft assured users that their dual boot systems wouldn't be affected, although it did warn that devices running older versions of Linux could experience problems. The SBAT value is not applied to dual boot systems that boot both Windows and Linux and should not affect those systems, the bulletin read. You might find that older Linux distribution ISOs will not boot. If this occurs, work with your Linux vendor to get an update. In fact, the update has been applied to devices that boot both Windows and Linux. That not only includes dual boot devices, but also Windows devices that can boot Linux from an ISO image, a USB drive, or optical media. What's more, many of the affected systems run recently released Linux versions, including Ubuntu 24.04 and Debian 12.6.0. With Microsoft maintaining radio silence, those affected by the glitch have been forced to find their own remedies. One option is to access their EFI panel and to turn off Secure Boot. Depending on the security needs of the user, that option may not be acceptable. A better short-term release or option is to delete the SBAT Microsoft pushed out last Tuesday. This means users will still receive some of the benefits of Secure Boot, even if they remain vulnerable to attacks that exploit CVE 2022-2601. The steps for this remedy are outlined here, and it goes through the process in the notes itself. I'm not going to go through that. The incident is the latest to underscore what a mess Secure Boot has become or possibly always was. Over the past 18 months, researchers have unearthed at least 4 vulnerabilities that can be exploited to completely neuter the security mechanism. The prior most recent instance was the result of test keys, and I think we all remember this one, used to authenticate Secure Boot on roughly 500 device models. The keys were prominently marked with the words, "Do not trust," yet were shipped anyway. At the end of the day, while Secure Boot does not make booting Windows more secure, it seems to have a growing pile of flaws that make it not quite as secure as it's intended to be, said Will Dorman, a senior vulnerability analyst at security firm Analogence.
Analogence.
Supposed to be an Analogence. Sure, there you go, Boo. Good job. I love clever names. Secure Boot gets messy. It's analysis and gents for some reason shoved together. So whatever gents is, it's intelligence maybe, analysis and intelligence thrown together. Super. Secure Boot gets messy in that it's not an MS only game, though they have the keys to the kingdom. Any vulnerability in Secure Boot component might affect a Secure Boot enabled Windows only system. As such, MS has to address block vulnerable things. So, yeah, Secure Boot just seems to be, as we pull back layer by layer, all of these vulnerabilities and sort of things that weren't implemented, let's say, in the best possible way, or also because we have, Microsoft being the one that controls it.
Another
Tommy,
surprise. Microsoft idea, which is a bit rubbish.
Tell me, when
Another news
secure,
shocker.
when Secure Boot first came out, I feel like it was specifically designed to keep people from running Linux.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's still some distros that, you know, don't play nice with it.
Don't
Right.
have secure. Yeah.
Well, and in some cases you have to disable it, install, and then you can re-enable it after the fact. Like you can get a signature to work properly, but yeah, it's not always straightforward. Yeah, I mean, I think at first you can say that. I mean, it's easy as a a Linux user to say, well, this is because it stops me from doing what I want to do with my machine the way I want to do it. Then yes, you can say that. But I think from the other side of it, they were genuinely trying to come up with a way to verify the signature of the what was loading, and that it's stopping things from being inserted into that process. But you see things like I think the last one was worse than this, frankly. I mean, yes, this obviously broke boot, and there are ways to get around that. But that the signed keys being reused, the test keys, and I mean all of this so far, as each of these things come to light, just makes you think: has any of this ever actually done anything of value? Has it done? Was it one of those things that was done to make somebody feel safe somewhere? That illusion of safety where it's like, oh, well, we have secure boot in place, so that's going to stop any, potential threats. When in fact, maybe it's never really done any of that the way that it's supposed to, or at least the way it's purported to. I don't know.
Okay, next up. Stealthy SetExp Linux malware evaded detection for 2 years. This is from Bleeping Computers. Stealthy Linux malware named SetExp has been evading detection since 2022 by using a persistence technique not yet included in the MITRE attack framework. The malware was discovered by risk management firm Strauss Friedberg, an Aon insurance company, and enables its operators to create reverse shells for remote access and to further the attack. At the time of this writing, the persistence technique used UDEV rule is not documented by MITRE attack. The researchers note, highlighting that SetExp is an advanced threat that hides in plain sight. UDEV is a device management system for the Linux kernel responsible for handling nodes in the /dev directory, which contains files that represent the hardware components available on the system, such as storage drives, network interfaces, and USB drives. Node files are dynamically created and removed when the user disconnects devices, while UDEV also handles the loading of appropriate drivers. UDEV rules are text configuration files that dictate how the manager should handle certain devices or events, located in etc/udev/rules.d or lib/udev/rules.d. These rules contain 3 parameters that specify its applicability. Action = add, the device name, kernel = stb1, and what script to run when the specified conditions are met. Run + path to script. SetXP malware adds the following UDEV rule on compromised systems. That in the show notes. This rule triggers whenever a new device is added to the system, checking if its major and minor numbers match /dev/random, which is loaded upon system boot and used as a random number generator by multiple apps and system processes. Final component, run + ASEDEXPB run : executes the malware's script. So by setting /dev/random as a precondition, the attackers ensure the malware is run frequently. Most importantly, /dev/random is an essential system component on Linux that security solutions do not monitor. Hence, its abuse guarantees evasion for the malware. The malware names is process kdev TMPFS, which mimics a legitimate system process, further blending in with normal activities and making it harder to detect using conventional methods. Regarding its operational capabilities, the malware uses either forked PTY or pipes and a forked new process to set up a reverse shell for the attacker to remotely access the device. ZXP also employs memory manipulation techniques to hide any file containing the string ZEXP from standard commands like ls or find, concealing its presence on the system. It can also modify memory contents to inject malicious code or alter the behavior of existing apps and processes. The researchers mentioned that the malware has been used in the wild since at least 2022. They found it present in many online sandboxes and without being detected. On VirusTotal, only 2 antivirus engines flag as malicious the 3 ZXP samples available in the report. According to Strauss-Friedberg, the malware has been used to hide credit card scraping code on a web server, compromised web servers, indicating involvement in financially motivated attacks.
No, they want money for this?
Malware tries to get money? That's crazy.
Whatever next, eh?
What will PIA think of next? I'm sorry.
Ouch. Well, I don't have anything else to say on that one.
No, I mean, it does look a bit scary, I've got to be honest. But I'm not sure how many people are going to be affected by it.
Yeah.
And
how indiscriminate they're going to be. I mean, is this going to be more focused or...
Right, unless Ubuntu or Canonical servers got hacked and somebody, changed the source code a bit, I don't think this is going to affect us at all.
Well, let's hope not, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we've got nothing else to say, I think it is time for the bi-weekly wanderings. Bi-weekly wanderings, where we talk about what we did over the last couple of weeks. Go on, Joe.
Okay, one of the listeners of one of my other shows sent me a Lightbook Mars that needed a new micro SD.
You have other shows?
Yes, a couple.
Oh, is this shameless plugging?
No, I hadn't even mentioned the name of the show yet. I will, though. That'll be a shameless plug. It's actually a well-built device, and I have received it, and I have found my box of ports, and I'll be putting it... I've already actually put it together. I was looking for my solder wick, but I just ordered some. I did end up working on this device while on stream with the Lugcast. That's one. And I will discuss it on Tilts. That's two. And how it was fixed. I don't want to spoil it since the person that sent the request wanted me to talk about it on Tilts. Next show, I'll talk about it on here, but the main portion of me talking about it will be on Tilt. In the past, I've talked about the Razer Nari Ultimates that I have been fixing and that I really enjoy using. Well, even after buying used USB dongles for them, which either did not work or only worked for a short time. In the past, I had seen a fix for it that involved bridging a resettable fuse that has a tendency to go bad. Previously, I decided not to try it because of how incredibly tiny and daunting this fix is. Impossible to even picture it, how small this little resettable fuse is. Plus, I have my concerns about bridging a fuse, but I decided to throw caution to the wind and give it a shot anyway. I wasn't able to bridge across the top of the fuse the way the write-up showed. The person that put it out on, I think it was Reddit, showed it was they put a wire across the top of that resettable fuse. But I was able to remove the fuse entirely and replace that with a very thin wire. I'm happy to say that it works very well, and I'll be trying it on some of the other ones that I have that go in and out. I think this will work for them, even though they are working a little bit differently than this one was. And it's currently the headset that I'm using for audio. This one was not showing up as a connected all before I did the fix. The other two that I have will connect and then like disconnect intermittently and not show up. But since it is a resettable fuse, that may still be the issue. I've also done a lot of 3D printing in the last couple of weeks. I pulled the white PLA and switched back to a black. I reprinted some D handles for my workout equipment. They work really well. They are thicker than the commercial ones, and despite being made out of PLA, they are more than strong enough for the couple of 100 pounds of pressure that I'm going to end up putting on them. I also published it to Thingiverse, my first item published on Thingiverse. I want to add a couple of more photos to the Thingiverse page, but I'm happy for now. And I'll be going back through my Tinkercad and deciding what else to publish as well. Some of them are remixes, and I kind of feel bad I haven't tracked where I got them from because I wasn't ever planning on publishing them. And some of them are also remixed from multiple other designs, and there's no way to directly attribute that. But I do want to get some of them out there anyway. I also designed and printed a replacement front stop for my laptop cooler that had broken. It didn't take me very long to do at all, to measure and design, and it took longer to print than anything else. I think it took like an hour and a half to print, and it worked really well. And my laptop in the living room is now much more stable. I also found and started printing some stackable Gridfinity baskets to help clean up my work area again. Also, a jig to hold wires for soldering that has a base that fits into the Gridfinity baskets, so I can put it away in the basket when I'm not using it. I finally finished putting together that DAS I was working on before and got it hooked up to my computer. I kind of had to, since my other store-bought DAS died and I needed to hook up my 12 terabyte drive, which is one of the drives that my Plex is using. The PCI card went right in and does not block the airflow for the graphics card, which was one of my main concerns. But the graphics card that I got from Bill is a single slot, and airflow is more towards the back, so it works out really well. I also hooked up the 3 drives that Bill gave, and I wiped them because they did. I'll probably be replacing those drives as I get larger ones, but for now, working good. Thank you, Bill. I'll also be getting another cable so that I can hook up 4 more drives, and I'm probably going to be replacing the fans that are in that box with actuals because they are aggressively loud. And then I also need to reprint the drive tray covers because not all of them want to mount up correctly. They're not quite wide enough. Some of the center slots, I don't know if the case just bowed out in the middle or what, but yeah, it's not, they're not fitting in there. So a couple of extra things to do on that. I would love to add 4 more drives. I do have 4 more either 0.5 or 1 terabyte drives that I could add in there and just slowly swap those out with like 12 terabyte drives. Or I saw some 14 drives on for a good price the other day, but we'll see. Now, I was also able to hire a person to come out and dispose of some of the things in my backyard, a lot of the branches that I could not cut down any further into firewood, and some old boards left over from some wooden lawn furniture, plus a couple of other things that were no longer needed. Gas grill that had kind of started rusting out in the middle, and various other things. And since they were going to be here anyway, I decided to do a garage clean out with the 3-day weekend that I had at the time. Mostly old, irrelevant projects and things that I didn't need anymore from my garage. There were laptops and tablets that were well beyond repair, and if I call them beyond repair, they're beyond repair. Cables that went to nothing, that type of thing, and like it was 4 or 5 giant contractor bags I got out of here, and it cleaned up a lot of room. And I was able to move the 2 bookcases from the front of the garage to the back of the garage, which gives me a lot more room for my workout equipment. I actually got a foldable exercise bike that's able to fit out here now. I have much more room for my weights. It's kind of nice. I have a lot more cleaning to do after that to get everything the way that I actually want it. But, there's seating for guests in here now again. And with the cooling temperatures, high 80s, low 90s now, I can invite people over again. Still need a fan though. Sorry about that. And that's kind of it for me. Boss.
Well, what about Moss? I've heard that name somewhere before. I've had another rough few weeks. My wife lost her health insurance. The health insurance marketplace said we don't make enough money to qualify for the federal subsidy for ACA, so nothing. It would have cost her more than $800 a month to keep her health insurance. And considering my Social Security is only like $1,200 a month, that's kind of a non starter. Susanna's clearly thinking about going back to Canada, not my fault. I've been fighting a bad cold for the past week. Hope I don't sound too bad. And I got FCWN 383 recorded before my throat was at its worst, and it's lots better today. Thank you, Bird Dog Blackberry Whiskey, the best gargle ever. My pine time appears to be dead. Or is it the charging cradle? I don't know. I might have to send it to one of you guys to check it out. And no, that's not going to happen. I don't want to spend another $9.95 plus shipping to get another charging cradle, and my wife wouldn't approve that, nor would she approve me getting another pine time at this juncture. However, I was surprised to receive an email just a few days ago from Pine 64 with an RMA to return the watch and send it back on September 4th. This is amazing because it was, by the time I got the RMA, it was well after 2 months since I received the watch, and they have a 30-day warranty and a 14-day return policy. So I was very pleasantly surprised to receive that, and I'll see what happens when they send it back. I'm assuming they send it back. Anyhow, we went to a friend's house in South Carolina for a house filk. There were 5 performers, 6 if you count a singing couple as individuals, and enough listening ears to make it real fun. I had a wonderful time. I can't recall seeing Suzanne smile as much as she did. I took Lenore, my Enya Next G pseudo acoustic guitar, and Carlos, my Spanish classical. I took my Pine Tab 2 with me to show off to one of my filking friends. It was going pretty well until it would not bring up the dialog box to log into Wi-Fi. I was crushed. When I got home, I reflashed DankNext Linux, the original Arch-based Linux which came on the tablet, and it seems to have been completely updated and is working again. The updates of the kernel made it work a lot better, including I no longer have to turn the Wi-Fi off before booting down. And it automatically connects to Wi-Fi when I boot up. So that's working, but I wish I'd gotten to show it off to my friend a little bit better. I finally got another work day at school. That's 2 this school term. I believe the jobs will be coming more frequently now, at least until winter holiday. And then I got that cold that kept me out for a whole week. The kids love me. I get comments every day I work about how they wished I would be their sub more frequently. That always warms a person's heart, you know? No news on my computer distro hopping. I seem to be settled on both my machines with multiple distros. My desktop has Mint Mate 22, Bodhi 7, and Neon, while my laptop has Mint Mate 22, Bodhi 7, and Farron. Farron is still not updated. We're still waiting for him to get out from under his finishing schoolwork or whatever it is holding him down now. But he is keeping things going on his forum, so he hasn't given up yet. My wife's laptops and the TV machine are still just running Mint Mate. All Mint versions are 22. I would like to replace one of the Bodhi installations with Debodhi, but I haven't gotten motivated to do that or to decide which of the 2 machines gets the Deb. I would like to announce that Full Circle Weekly News is now carried on Spotify and YouTube, in addition to the feed in your podcatcher. And yes, I wrote my show notes wrong. It says not carried. No, it's now carried on Spotify and YouTube. This should get more ears on the show and is a good thing. Trademark. That's it for me. What about you, Majid?
Okay, so I spent most of August in India visiting family, so hence I wasn't on the last couple of shows. Bangalore and the Pune were the cities I went to. And whilst I hate the long haul flights there and back, I mean, 10 hours, no thank you. I did enjoy the holiday. It was nice meeting everyone, and it was a good opportunity just chill out. I tried to disengage as much as I could from work. However, it caught up with me. One of our junior doctors suddenly passed away from a bad pneumonia. Of course, there wasn't much I could do from India, but I was able to give some support to the other junior doctors who had worked with her. And speaking of junior doctors, I met one of my cousins in India who has just qualified as a doctor. She was wanting some career advice. Hopefully, I've converted her to anesthesiology. She may even decide to work in the UK as competition is very high. I mean, it is a country with 1.4 billion people. I suppose I should mention a little bit about India and technology. Android is king. Everybody's got an Android phone. I counted, I saw 3 iPhones in the entire trip. The range of devices is much more extensive than, and with everything at different price points. You know, every kind of price point margin you can think of, there's another phone. Loads of Oppos, Xiaomi's, Vivos, even some more Samsungs. I mean, obviously we do get quite a lot of Samsung phones in the West, but some that I hadn't seen. And also, every transaction is contactless, and it's contactless with this thing called UPI. It's a Unified Payments Interface set up by the Indian government. It's actually, I did a bit of research into this actually. It's actually an open source standard, and it connects your bank account to your phone and your phone number, and then you can pay by scanning a QR code. Google have actually got an implementation of it, as have some more local companies called Paytm and PhonePay. And it's so widespread. I mean, I'm talking about, like, you go out and you see a stall selling samosas or fruit, and they're like, pay by UPI. Everybody's got a QR code that's on there. I was actually a little bit handicapped because I was just relying on cash and normal contactless, NFC payments, tap to go as they call it over there. It's a bit more difficult for foreigners to register and get a either Paytm or PhonePay or Google Pay thing there, as you need an Indian bank account. India really is a digital native place. There's so many services and things here that rely on having a smartphone. It's a real necessity. I mean, I know you
Honestly,
could say it's a necessity here, but
that
you couldn't do anything over there without a smartphone.
that sounds more secure than even like the tap to pay or anything like that, because you're not giving your information out. You're taking their information in. So it does
Yeah.
sound like it would be a much better way to do.
Um, Apart from India, though, only Singapore is the only other place that uses this UPI standard. Um, I I mean, I'm not naive. I know that the Indian government probably did this so that they could eliminate so-called black money. If every transaction is recorded, if everything's connected to your bank account, then there's less ways of there being corruption, and there's more data that they have. But it works surprisingly well. The other thing that's great about services over there is, they're just, it's a country of 1.4 billion people, right? So people need jobs. And I tell you, it seems like half young people are all in the delivery business. I mean, there was a couple of services, one's called Blinkit, another one's called Swiggy. They'll pick up your groceries and drop it down to your house 10 minutes maximum. Swiggy is even interesting because say you make some food, I don't know, some biryani or whatever, and you want to give it to somebody, who lives on the other side of the city. You can actually use one of these services, and they'll come and they'll pick the food up and they'll come and they'll deliver it for you. Which was I just thought it was cool. I just used to just sit in our apartment just ordering ice cream and other things, ostensibly for the kids. Obviously, I was buying it for them, obviously, but it was brilliant. I'm missing it already. From a Linux viewpoint, I had installed Mint 22 Cinnamon on my main laptop before going to India, so I'll get a good few weeks with it, and I could really put it through its paces over there. I couldn't get along with Cinnamon. I lasted about a week with that. Maybe I've got used to eye candy, maybe I've got used to touchpad gestures, or maybe I've just got used to the general modernness of GNOME and KDE. Maybe I'm getting a GNOME workflow, I don't know. But after about a week, I thought, forget this, I'm going to install GNOME on it. So now I basically have an Ubuntu install without the Ubuntu extensions or Snap. And I don't know whether it's GNOME. the Wayland support or whatever, but the machine feels snappier and smoother and more performant, which is surprising because Cinnamon is a very lightweight desktop environment. So I'm assuming it's eye candy to an extent. I did want to keep both Cinnamon and GNOME on there, but the fact that I had two file managers, files, or what used to be known as Nautilus, and Nemo was kind of tickling me OCD. So I uninstalled Nemo, which ended up uninstalling Cinnamon. So I've got another Frankenstein Ubuntu install. I got rid of the Surface 3 laptop, which I'd got off eBay, as I had some difficulties installing Linux on it. I mean, I know there's some ways around this and specific Surface laptop kernels and stuff you can get, but the seller was happy to offer a return, and I was going to be traveling, so I just accepted it. This means for the first time in a long time, I only have one laptop, which is the definition, I think, of a hashtag first world problem. Although, having said that, I've just bought a Lenovo tablet off eBay today for about £60. I was tempted by one of the new Snapdragon laptops, but
When are
Linux
you going to
supports.
listen and get a Dell?
Yeah, well, yeah, I went for the Lenovo because it was cheaper. Anyway, I did have a Dell XPS 13 for a while. Yeah, I shouldn't have got rid of that. That was quite good, actually.
No, if you want a Linux tablet, you can ask me. You can ask Eric. The Dell Latitude line, they're awesome.
Yeah, I was looking around for them as well, but I just saw this one. So there's this one Lenovo Mix 700, 8 gig of RAM, i5. Now the guy's selling it cheap because it's got no OS on it, and I'm like, mate, that's fine by me. I was gonna blast away the Windows anyway. So as I said, I only got it for $60. It's supposed to be coming in a couple of days' time.
Majid, you
Yeah.
know, I always tell people to look when you're looking for a computer on eBay to actually put no OS in your search.
Okay.
And you come up with a lot cheaper stuff. Sometimes they don't include the hard drive. You better usually with some machines you have to hope they include the hard drive caddy, but with some of them that even doesn't matter. And
I have a 3D printer that never matters.
well, I've gotten by just fine, just ordering one with no OS, and they start
Yeah.
out cheaper.
Brilliant. Yeah, so I've obviously just learned that hack now. I was tempted by one of these new Snapdragon laptops. One of my friend, the convert, as I call him, one who's coming over to open source, he's bought one and he really likes it. He loves the battery life on it, but he's a Windows user, and apparently Linux support is a bit lacking on them. I know that we've mentioned here before as well that Qualcomm have said that they've upstreamed all their stuff to the Linux kernel, but when people have actually tried to install, say, Ubuntu or whatever on them, they've not been able to manage to do it. And so I thought it'd be a very, very expensive way of experimenting. So I thought maybe not. Speaking of new chips, I saw some of the coverage of the new Lunar Lake Intel chips, which do look very, very good. With those kinds of improvements and the new AMD Ryzen AI chips, things are starting to look exciting in this space, and that's what we need in the industry. Proper competition spurs development. We were talking about this yesterday on OTC about how, Intel has been on its laurels for the last couple of years because it's just, it's had such a market lead, and it's not been forced to do anything, and now it's been forced to do something. And maybe, I mean, I don't trust Intel at all, but maybe we'll get some good stuff. I'm still getting used to having a NAS. Now I've got all my media and backups on it, and the next is to either get Plex or Jellyfin on it to turn it into a media streamer. So that's the next thing I need to do. I was using the S24 Ultra, and it was great while I was traveling. I didn't like the fact that it was very slow for charging in a place where electricity does go sometimes, but the camera was very good. Took some good pictures in some challenging situations. Having said that, again, I've seen the new Honor foldable that's been released. My brother-in-law had a Galaxy Z Fold 5, and I'm wondering whether maybe it's time to move over to foldables.
If you're looking at foldables, take a look at the OnePlus.
Yes,
supposed to be the thinnest on the market and really awesome.
Yeah, so I've been on eBay actually looking at the OnePlus Opens, trying to see if I can get a good deal on that. Yeah, that's definitely on top of my radar actually. Because I was traveling, I took a variety of headphones and earbuds so I could survive the traveling. I learned a few things. First, the Earphone Pro over-ear headphones I got are as good as my Sony XM4s for about a third of the price. So that is something worth getting. It's also got the high res codec support like LDAC and stuff. I also took my Samsung Buds FE, and even though they're not supposed to be water resistant, they evidently are because I dropped one of them in a big bucket of water, and it still works, which is great. And I also took some Soundcore P30s, which are very good considering they're only $40. I mean, at that kind of price, it's almost disposable, isn't it? They've actually got a useful phone stand as part of the case, so you can kind of, put your phone up against it and watch your media, whatever you want to do.
$40 is almost disposable. Oh boy,
Almost, yeah.
I wish I had your budget.
I did say almost. I did say almost. I mean, we went out for a meal yesterday because one of my mates is relocating to Dubai, and yes, there was about 8 of
Remember, I
us.
was fighting with my wife over spending the $25 for my pine time.
Anyway, and that meal cost us 140 quid. So I mean, but yes, I'm very lucky and I'm blessed that 40 quid can be disposable for me, and I'm thankful for that. Anyway, since I'm talking about headphones, I really enjoyed the new Linkin Park song. It's a brave new era. It's a new singer. I wasn't sure whether I'd like it or not, but I really enjoyed the song. I also like the new Manic Street Preachers song that has come out. I'm a big advocate of them, mainly because they're from my hometown. Oh, and the small news that Oasis are apparently getting back together. My 17-year-old son is a massive fan, which is interesting because obviously he was only 2 when they split up. I reckon his relationship to Oasis is probably what my relationship was to the Beatles, in the sense of, when I was a teenager, obviously I'd missed it out the first time round. But, it was something to kind of look back to. Anyway, apparently, according to some websites, I'm a zillennial. That, as in, I'm in between Gen X and millennial. I don't know. We had this conversation yesterday, and I still don't know the answer. But Oasis were a massive part of my formative years. I still know how to play a lot of their songs on guitar, mainly because they're easy. I couldn't get any tickets, unfortunately. But then I think half of this country tried to get tickets and couldn't. So they put out a new, well, not a new, they've put out a 30th anniversary edition of the album, Definitely Maybe, with some first takes and outtakes from the original recording sessions. And, for Oasis nerds like me and my son, that's quite good to hear how the album could have been. Managed to get through Umbrella Academy, the final season. It was a good ending. I also got through Vikings Valhalla, which was also good, but it left out a narrative place that really needs another season, except it's been cancelled. Thank you very much, Netflix, for that. Speaking of Netflix, I started on The Perfect Couple on Netflix with my wife, and it's good, frothy fun. It's switch off your brain kind of TV. Yeah, I mean, it's not going to win any prizes, but it's good for just watching while you're getting through your dinner. I'm not that impressed, I must say, with the new Rings of Power. Not because I'm a Tolkien fan or because I've got any other thing. It's just a
Nobody's
bit.
impressed with Rings of Power. They did it all wrong.
It's just a bit boring. That's the thing, Like, I mean, people. I've had this conversation with lots of people. People come up with, "Oh, it's a bit woke, or it's a bit this, or it's not true to the lore." It's like, look, I don't know anything about Tolkien. I'm the guy that only saw the original trilogy about 3 years ago. During lockdown, because I'd never got around to watching it when I was before. And so it's not as if I'm some kind of, Tolkien nerd or anything like that. But you've got to make the shows interesting, and you've got to make them just not boring. And they're just boring.
What they should have done is buy the rights to the Silmarillion. They didn't do that. They bought the rights to the appendices of the trilogy. And that's what they're turning into the Rings of Power series.
But it's not as if they're even
Have
following
you ever
that.
read the appendices? They're boring.
No. But, at the
Most
end
of
of the day,
Tolkien's writing is boring, okay? I don't
I
know
do
how you can
disagree.
make giant spiders boring, but that man did it.
I do disagree. I read that series at least 25 times before I got out of high school.
So interesting kind of tangent. Tolkien was brought up very close to where I live now, and there are places where you can see where he's picked up the ideas, like the Two Towers. There's a place in Birmingham where there are two towers, and that's where he's got the inspiration for that from. And the idea of Mordor is from the Black Country, because this is an area which had a lot of coal mining and there was a lot of soot and a lot of the buildings, hence it was called, nicknamed the Black Country. So but yeah, at the end of the day, I don't care what your source material is, you have to make an engaging program. And if it's not engaging and you're getting bored, then what, you can be as faithful or unfaithful to the books. You can be as woke or not woke, whatever it is. You just have to make good TV, though.
Some
This
of
is
the
the thing.
casting choices were fun too, like Doogie Elrond.
Yeah, Doogie Elrond. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. I like that. Maybe I actually need to revisit the original trilogy. I mean, as I said, I've only read. I haven't watched any of the Hobbit films. Are they any good? Desolation of
Too
Smaug.
many of them.
Okay.
They
Look, they
took
took
a single book and they turned it into a trilogy,
a single
and they added
tiny
so much
book.
new
Yeah, a
stuff.
single
Yeah,
tiny book. Yeah, I heard.
they added so much new stuff that you're wondering where they got it from. So it wasn't that bad in spots, but when you drag something that small out for so long, you're going to be bored sooner or later anyhow.
Anyway, and just to finish off, a little bit of a cat update. The cat we were mining for my daughter's friend is now officially ours. Young Simba. And yes, I did do a Lion King joke by raising him up and putting the circle of life on. Yes, I am that sad. And on that bombshell, I think we will move on to Eric.
The circle of life. Yes. It's okay. I do similar things with my cats. You kind of just have to. And sort of comes with the territory. But, oh my. Well, I am in week 3 of my first bout with COVID. Um, I know that a lot of people have already had it, and some have had it multiple times, but this is my first run with it. And it's basically made it so that I don't want to do anything. I'm just sort of lethargic. I make it to my appointments that I need to get to, but otherwise I've just been sort of doing a whole lot of nothing, and I'm really getting sick of it. But I've heard that this particular strain, at least, seems to be a 3-week thing. So hopefully hopefully after this week I really can get back to feeling a little better and to just get something done during a day. It's kind of sad. You get to the end of a day and you're like, what did I do today? Huh, almost nothing. Yeah, that's about right. So anyway, I only had a couple things to talk about. The first one is relevant to our innards, which is the pine time, which, as you heard Moss talk about, his pine time, but everyone in the group has sort of talked about wearables in general, and Pine Time specifically, but also just, I know Majid has had lots of different smartwatches and things like that. So I was interested in a Pine Time specifically because of the low cost and barrier to entry. It's my first smartwatch, and I really just wanted to know, after having seen people wear, Apple Watches and things like that for many years now, whether or not it was something that made sense to me. I think at first I sort of thought, what's the point? But now that I've worn one, I can certainly appreciate it more for what it is, and we'll get more into that in the innards. But the part that was a little difficult to deal with, I guess, was the shipping from China, which I've bought other things from China before. I've bought stuff on Temu or, other sites like that. And it's hit or miss. Sometimes you'd get something so quickly that you think, how could it possibly have come all the way around the world that fast? And then sometimes you think, is it ever going to get here? And this was somewhere in between, where the tracking itself was so opaque that it made it so that I had absolutely no idea what was happening at any time, whether it had actually left or was on its way.
Completely agree on that. Even if you went and checked the tracking on it, you see at least 8 different places in China it went to before it got handed off to the postal service, and then a week later the postal service still hasn't acknowledged getting it,
Yeah,
and
and
then all
it
of a
was
sudden it shows up.
Well, and the section of the page itself was weird because you had one part that was like all of the Chinese stuff, and then one part that was the postal service, and they didn't even like line up necessarily with the dates and times and stuff. It was just very strange. And every time you load the website, it insisted that you go through a tour, and it just a very very strange setup. I've never seen anything like it, and so I was never I it took a lot longer than I thought, which is fine. It's not like I needed it to be there, but it was just like, you start to think, am I ever going to get it? But anyway, so one of the other things was I missed last episode, which was 444.5, which was home on the LAN. And it was actually something I had suggested because I wanted to talk about home networks and home network setups and what kind of setups people have, and I'm trying to come up with a better solution for what I'm doing in my house, which right now is you know a mesh setup, and I have this Synology system, and I mean it's not the worst thing that I've ever seen, but it just does strange things, and it does give you some control, but it still doesn't. It does things, and then there's no way to tell. Like it does every day at 8 p.m. It reboots. Like all the nodes just go round robin rebooting. There's nothing in any kind of and any kind of logs or controls or anything that you can do to change it. It just happens, and it's such a strange thing. And it it really annoys me because it never fails that it happens right when I'm in the middle of doing something. So it's stuff like that. Plus, the throughput isn't that great, and I would like to have a better solution, I guess. And so I was curious to see what everybody was doing. Anyway, everybody did a great job of talking about their system. So that if you haven't listened to that episode, which is the one prior to this one, you definitely should take a listen, especially if you have any interest in home networking, because there's a lot of diversity and variety in the way that things are set up. So I'm going to go back and listen to that and then take some ideas from it. So the last thing I had was just living in Florida, and this year in particular, and living in a tropical climate. So normally between July 1st and August 31st, we get just around 20 inches of rain, which is still, you think in 2 months' time, that's a pretty decent amount of rain for anywhere, right? I mean, it is tropical and it is summertime. This year we've received 47 inches, which is which is well over twice as much in that same amount of time. And in August alone, we received 23.55 inches compared to the normal of 9.11 inches. And so it has been raining like constantly. And it's not like hyperbole to say it rains all the time, because it has literally been raining like all the time, and not kind of raining, like ridiculous downpour. So we've had epic flooding, and it's just been the most like unbelievable summer in terms of rain. And when you live, if you've ever lived in Florida, you know that there's usually a almost daily afternoon thunderstorm, but it's just been unbelievable. And then the thing on top of that, the kicker is you have all that humidity, and is that the average temperature, high temperature, has been 94 degrees during that whole time. With it
Lucky
actually
bastard.
being, I know, right? Yeah, only Joe would know my pain there with Texas. South Texas is even worse, I think, in times than Florida it can be.
Yeah, thankfully I'm in
Climate-
North Texas, which is bad enough.
Yeah,
Climate change is a hoax, boys and girls.
yeah, right. Well, I'll tell you what, there's been a lot of places here where I wonder what they're going to do in terms of insurance, because I mean so many properties were just so Debbie, when that came through, we got a ton of flooding, and places that hadn't flooded in like 40 years, 50 years, flooded, and not just flooded, but like flooded epically, like a lot of destruction. And the infrastructure just can't handle all of the growth with, you put up pavement and concrete, and there's nowhere for that water to go except into the sewage system and the drain system, and then that gets overwhelmed. And yeah, it's
Yeah. I mean, it's a problem in lots of places. Bangalore and Pune were the two cities I went to in India. Have this exact same problem. So Bangalore used to be known as a garden city, right? There's one garden left. There's so much kind of construction, and
Sprawl, yeah.
that. And is anybody doing anything about infrastructure? Is anybody doing anything about sewage or this, that, and the other? I mean, it's India, for God's sake. Yeah, half the stuff's illegal anyway. And my grandmother, who's lived there for coming up to 50 years now, or maybe longer than that, 60, since they moved there. She tells me that it has got significantly warmer, significantly, you know, because of the fact that there's nowhere for the heat to kind of escape. There's no shade. There's nowhere for the water to go. So you get it gets really hot in the summer, and then when the monsoon season, like it is now, it just floods because there's nowhere for this water to go,
Yeah.
and whether, I mean, I'm not going to get into the arguments about climate change and all this kind of stuff, but the one thing that is true is that even for the climate that we have, people are not building infrastructure, and this is in many different countries. Whether it's okay, it might be very acute in India, but it's true in the States, it's true in the UK as well. People aren't doing anything just to stand. Even just to stand still, you have to do a particular amount of work, and they're not even doing that. And then on top of the fact that yes, there are these kind of climate change things happening. Well, nobody's budgeting for any of that, are they? You're making the situation on the ground as it is worse. It's just
Yeah.
it I think some people are going to be in for a very rude awakening.
Well, you can joke and say, well, my house is, far enough back from because everywhere in Florida, most people live within, 10 miles or so of the coast. So, as the water levels rise for whatever the cause is, I'm not going to get political about it, but like, that is going to be a problem. And the real problem is that insurance basically is non-existent for a lot of these coastal communities. It gets difficult to even be able to get homeowners insurance. And so the next time a storm comes through, I mean, a lot of these people didn't have flood insurance because where it flooded, it hasn't flooded in 50 years or more. And why bother get flooding insurance, because it's never going to flood, right? Well, now it is. So yeah, it's been a really really difficult rude awakening, I guess is how you can say it, for people to realize like almost nobody is safe, especially in a low-lying area like basically all of Florida, especially on the coast. So anyway, yeah, very interesting month, and I'm very much looking forward to fall for a break from all of the heat and moisture. So there you go. I think that's it for our wonderings.
Okay, then. So now we're going to move on to the Linux innards. So today's Linux innards, the topic is about wearables. And what do we mean by wearables? We mean things such as smartwatches, smart rings, glasses. This has become a thing. I've heard of VR and AR glasses. I suppose, would the Apple Vision Pro come into this? I suppose so. They call it spatial computing. It's something you wear. So yeah.
Google
What's
Glass.
Apple? I've never
Yeah,
heard of that company.
No, it's they're just a small Californian outfit. You wouldn't have heard of them. And
Does it run Linux?
but I think it runs BSD. But there are other things that we can, people get. I mean, I've heard of wearable mouse keyboards and things like that.
Actually have one.
Yeah, Bluetooth headsets. I mean, I suppose most people are now really using headphones, Bluetooth headphones, but I suppose that could be counted as a
It would still be a
headset.
headset because it has a microphone.
True. So, who would like to start us off on their experience with wearables?
Well, let me run through this real quick. Now, I have had a couple of different watches, but all of them have been Samsung watches. What the Watch 3 or the Watch S3, excuse me. I've currently got the S5. I also had their other one that was their fitness tracker / watch. Name on it was longer and thinner than the standard round ones you got now. I do want to mention the rings because they are interesting. Obviously, they don't have the displays that the watches do. They'll do a lot of the other things that the watches do. Those really are just for fitness. And yes, you can get wrist-based items that don't have a display and have the fitness too. I just think it's interesting to have it in a ring that will track your steps, track your activity, track your O2 levels, your sleep quality, maybe even one day your blood sugar levels like the Apple Watch does. But no, I haven't done any of those yet, and I didn't want to when it was just the company Aura that really had them out because that was a subscription-based model. But now that Samsung has one coming out and a whole bunch of other companies are copying them, it's something that I might give a try in the future. Now, when it comes to glasses, I have done some VR. I do want to get an Oculus. I'm actually looking at used ones right now for prices for the VR and AR. I'll be more interested when it's like a standard looking pair of glasses, and I know a couple of companies have tried, but they haven't really succeeded yet to get the technology down that far. And then I know some big companies are basically turning your glasses into phone conduction speakers, which I guess is interesting enough because, you know, I take my glasses everywhere anyway, but I could see where, you know, trying to put a battery in them would make it a lot heavier, and that's a tough call for me. But going back to like the VR and AR, before those things really became a thing, and even currently ongoing, there were displays that were glasses. Quality wasn't that good. I've had those before, get them relatively cheaply. And essentially, it's just, you know, like an HDMI input or an RCA input um, to a screen that you wear on your face, and then you can watch movies and stuff on it. The quality wasn't really enough for me to, you know, like actually be able to type something with it, just because of how large the pixels look and how blurry the actual image is. But watching a movie on it wasn't terrible. And then you like hook up your own headphones. It was an okay experience. It wasn't something that I went all out for anything. And then I know you can still get them. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, just to interrupt. I remember buying a Meta Quest, and I thought I'd use it for watching movies, you know, in a similar kind of way. I didn't find it actually that good. Actually, I was surprised. I was expecting it to be, you know, wow, massive screen, blah blah blah. But actually, it was just a bit disorientating.
Yeah, that was the only thing that I really liked about like the Samsung Gear VR, where you put your phone in it, was watching Netflix and YouTube on that. Just the whole peripheral experience that they added with it and all that jazz. So like when I'm looking for an Oculus or a Meta Quest, whatever, I'm not looking to get the 3, which is super expensive. But I might be willing to pay $100, 150 for the Quest 2, or I might be willing to pay $40 or $50 for the Quest 1, which granted doesn't have all the support that the other ones. But I would still be able to like watch movies on or something like that. Although the Netflix app no longer goes to the Quest 1 or the Oculus Go. So that's one of the reasons that I've included the 2 in my searches.
Yeah, I agree. The VR, I got one. The Gear VR came with a phone that I bought, and it just happened to the guy had it and offered it. And and yeah, I mean, you do the tech demos, and they're kind of cool. You look around and whatever. There's one that was like a coyote that wandered around like a desert scene, um, I mean, I hadn't ever tried VR before, so it was like a completely new experience. But the thing that I actually did like sit and use it for was using it for YouTube and Netflix, and yeah, it was like having a home theater basically, virtually, obviously, but like you because the screen was a high enough resolution and it was just far enough away, it had you could
Adjustable.
adjust the lenses, and they were plastic lenses. It wasn't like the highest quality in the world, but it was good enough, and the screen was good enough on the phone, and the way that the pass through was, so that you had you know earphones, and I mean it was actually a pretty decent experience. After a while, it got to be a little uncomfortable, and so you'd watch a movie, but it was if you don't have a home theater or a home, theater setup or a larger television, it was a pretty decent experience. But that's about as much as you could expect with it. And it certainly wasn't an all day type of thing. I mean, maybe some people found it more comfortable than I did, but, and it does you get your eyes start to fatigue after a little while. And, it's not natural to have something that close to your eyes for so long.
And I
I
did
I
play
don't.
a couple of games on the Gear R, with a Bluetooth controller, a couple of the space-based up games, and a couple of, shooters where you walk around and they were okay. They weren't mind-blowing or...
Well, I mean, it always feels like it's a solution in search of a problem in some ways where yes, there are things that are impressive about it, but it isn't so like such a revolutionary shift where, you put it on and you have an experience that is completely so overwhelming that that everybody's going to want one, or and
Yeah.
the proof of that is that we have the technology to make a really decent Gear VR style system with all of the ability to change the lenses and all that stuff, and it just hasn't caught on. You would think even just as a gimmick, as a fad, like someone for Christmas, or some company would pick it up and make it into like a high-end toy or something, and it really just has not.
If,
There has
Oh,
not been
well,
that
if
like
they
well,
could
killer
Met,
come out...
feature.
well, Meta have been trying, haven't they? They even renamed their company after a virtual Rio, and I had one, and it was fine, but it didn't really blow me away.
Well, no,
You
they
know,
bought Oculus and then they renamed
yeah,
the Meta, and then they, at the same time, changed the company.
yeah. They put a lot of money into this idea of the metaverse, which, to be honest, sounded more like a post-apocalyptic sci-fi film. Really,
Yeah.
uh, it's not the future we wanted.
But,
Well, yeah, but the cost of the gimmick is the biggest
exactly.
part of that. It's a problem that hasn't arisen, so they're not solving anything, and then they're charging $1,000, $2,000 for a gimmick.
Well, it's actually
Yeah.
come down. It's like 3 to 500, which is still a lot. Like if they could come out with something that was sub 100, I'm sure they get a lot of sales. But it'd still be a gimmick in the end, because
Google
yeah,
Cardboard.
yeah, it's well, a lot of people use Google Cardboard and found out things were a gimmick. But I mean, yeah, watching a movie is great, but if you're watching it with anybody else, then the headset's kind of useless. Um, but yeah, uh, I don't know. It's still something that I would watch out for in the future, and that I am somewhat interested in playing around with. But we'll see. Now, I've also, like, when I had the S3 and when I had the S7, and I think for a little while I had the Note 3, I built adapters to be able to wear them on my wrist. And that was cool back then, because even the Note 3 is smaller than the phones nowadays. I don't think I could do that with my S24 Ultra. And you can't really purchase smartphones that are under 6.2 inches. And even like your old Notes were like 5.8 inches. They were considered huge at the time. So it's a lot to try and put that on your wrist. I did enjoy that back in the day, and I wore it all the time. And I even my wife did it with her S3 because I actually had a custom leather wristband made for her to fit her wrist and to fit the S3, and that worked really well for her. She loved the hell out of that. So that was when I was putting the application on the phone to force it to stay in what is it, landscape mode. So that way it looked right on my wrist when I was looking at it like a watch. But yeah, I was a bit. And then Bluetooth headsets, I know a lot of people, because they're so ubiquitous, might not consider them a wearable device, but when you think about it, they really are. And when I was looking up the definition of wearable devices for this show, they were one of the things that popped up. Everybody's got a freaking Bluetooth. And then I also did want to mention the tap, the wearable keyboard and mouse. Yeah, it's a little janky to use, but if you get it tightened just right, you can actually type pretty well. And then it's got the little mouse thing on the thumb that you can set it on a flat surface and run it around. And it works really well for me for a second keyboard and mouse when my primary is busy. I do like that, and it does work. I am interested in maybe getting a Pine Time, but probably more for my wife than for me. Because, you know, I've got the Samsung already, and I'm going to keep using that probably till it's dead and buried. But yeah, I don't see VR taking over the world, but I could see AR taking over the world. I'd love to have like a little pop-up screen that comes up on my glasses that's, you know, like right there that nobody can see from the outside, or they can only see like a black square or something, and be able to watch a TV show or a movie out in public when I'm bored as hell. And
Yeah,
no one
I
knows.
think like what is it? The Microsoft ones were pretty interesting just because exactly that, where it was a hybrid. So the idea that you are in a virtual VR headset is, you know, you're sort of uh, in your own little world. You're taken away from the world around you. You're kind of like, you know, someone could literally just walk up to you and push you over or something. But you know, AR is kind of cool because you've got it's a hybrid of you know, you're still in the real world, and you know, the Microsoft tech demos I always thought were neat because that idea of the screen, like we were talking about, of a Netflix app or something, you would be able to attach something onto a physical object. So if you say, okay, this wall over here in front of me, I want to put a screen on it, like a television type monitor or screen like that. You know, I put it there and then it stays there. And so I can move my head around and still have spatial awareness, have the, you know, the reality that's around me, but then have this, you know, augmented component to it that's, you know, either off in a corner
How
or,
how helpful would that be for work? I
mm,
mean,
how many
I
screens could you have? Yeah.
don't have
Mm-hmm.
to buy these giant monitors that I have
Mm-hmm.
now. I can just have it sit there right in the middle of everything and just be there. And then, okay, well, let me look over here, or let me do a hand gesture and switch over to my personal computer, and then, oh, let me switch back, or have, you know, one monitor over here and one monitor over here, or four monitors set up so I can monitor different
Mm-hmm.
applications at the same time.
Well, and be able to like tap in and like say, okay, I want to focus on this one monitor, but instead of needing to have my head turned, maybe I just say, okay, literally just swipe it into view, and like this becomes my primary display for that period of time, and then I can swipe. There's so many, you know, you just do away with all these limitations, and
Right.
honestly, when Apple started talking about doing VR stuff or AR stuff, I thought that's what they were going to do. I thought they were going more towards the Microsoft, you know, or Google Glass or whatever,
Well,
like having something that's smaller, more discreet that you could wear, and have more of like an AR kind of interface instead of this like huge headset that it's his own computer. And what they came up with is very different from what I had originally thought that they would go for, because I can see if there was a product that was doing even a fraction of what you and I were just talking about with, being able to have computer monitors or, televisions on a wall or whatever, a readout of like, I thought an idea was cool. Like I suck with names. And to have something where it knows like your Google Photos or something where it can, know somebody's name and face, and you get a little like readout, like a dossier of like this person you're talking to.
Or
So
God forbid it tells you not only their name but where you know them from, or
yeah,
who their
exactly. And you're
friend.
like, oh,
Yeah,
okay. So there's just stuff like that. I mean, I know some of that's sort of science fictiony, but like that all seems like it's within the realm, and also all just sort of like useful stuff, like that I think people would actually use and want and pay money for, versus these like gigantic, of course not many people are gonna pay $3,500, $3,600, whatever, for the Apple one, or it's actually like 4,200 for the one with more storage or whatever. Anyway, I mean, and I don't think they ever thought that either, but I think what they're doing is trying to refine it, and maybe
they're
several
running the hype
generations from now.
train for now.
Yeah, but I mean, ultimately, I think if someone could do something um, that was less dorky than a Google Glass, so that you didn't look like a complete like
Yeah.
pillock running
Well,
around. Go
I
ahead.
I want to give my spiel on Google Glass anyway, because that was so hyped before it came out, and it was
Oh
going to
my
do all
God,
this
I
stuff,
know.
and it was going to have these pop-ups all over the place that was just going to tell you all these cool things, and
Yeah,
actual pictures of stuff coming up in that corner, and it's like, that's awesome. And then it came out and it's like, wow, that sucks.
yeah, yeah. That was definitely a lot of hype, and
Well,
I
Noah
mean, I think
Chelaya is still really high on his, and he even
I
bought the upgrade.
I know a lot of people like them still. It's just I was really disappointed with its capabilities versus what they told me the capabilities were going to be.
hmm
And so many people just got pissed that you were wearing a camera on your face and walking around, and they had no idea if you were taking pictures of them or not. That you could
Yeah,
walk
but
into a
they
place and get
invented the name
punched.
Glasshole, didn't they?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I
I mean,
know, like,
I think Google Glass was just a bit too early. The technology wasn't there.
yeah, and then like Ray-Ban, don't they have the audio ones, and don't they also have like a camera on them?
Yeah,
But they have
so there are some Ray-Ban Meta glasses.
they have the red light on them, but they don't have a
Yeah.
display or anything. It's just the audio and the camera.
Hmm.
But yeah, and there are some companies that are like making very expensive AR glasses that almost look like glasses. I mean, you can tell that they're AR glasses. Big thing in front of
yeah,
your face, but and they're not really commercially priced. I know a couple of people have gone out and bought them on their own anyway, and then the resolution was garbage. Hopefully one day.
yeah. Well, that whole category I think is still pretty much future facing. Like we just haven't found the right balance of hardware to price to performance to like that whole sort of how do we figure out what makes sense for people, and then on top of that, what are they using it for? Like what's the killer app, the killer feature, whatever. And we haven't quite figured that out either. But
I
other
think the
things,
NCAA figured out what the killer feature was when one of Michigan's assistant coaches decided to start visiting other schools and actually taking video of their play calls.
mm,
But
yeah, I mean, there's
that's a
definitely
killer feature in
privacy.
that they want to kill Michigan for doing it.
Yeah, there's absolutely a lot of privacy concerns around people, but I mean, we're living more
Well,
and more in a world where cameras are just sort of everywhere, and I mean, I don't
well,
know, like,
think of Majid. I mean, steps outside, he's on 12 cameras.
yeah, that's true. Yep. Well, the British public
Um,
has,
yeah. The what about watches, Joe? What have you been on? Have you been
I did
what,
mention the watches and the ones that
mostly Samsung.
phones that I turned
yeah.
in watches. But yeah, it's all really been the Samsung. I mean, I had that early Samsung fitness one that was oblong shaped.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
had the second version of that, and
Mhm.
it was decent. The contacts eventually died, and it wouldn't charge anymore. Um,
Mm.
and I've had the S3 Frontier, which was a
Mhm.
really good looking watch,
Yes, yeah, it was. It was a
and
nice watch.
I kept using it until they quit supporting it on my phone.
Mhm.
So, and then I've got the S5 now,
Okay.
and that's basically it when it comes to smartwatches.
Okay.
Like, I don't know if you had stepped out of the room when I was talking about the S3, the S7, and the Note 3 that I turned into watches.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You did mention. So, I mean, I've had a bit of a history with wearables, with smartwatches, but before I get into it, Eric, you've recently been using something, haven't you?
Yeah, I finally got the Pine Time, like I mentioned, and you know, for a long time I thought so. My the only people I know that really use smartwatches, simply because I'm around a lot of medical people, it seems like a lot of nurses and doctors and just medical field in general. And I don't know what the real value is, and I guess I should ask them, but it seems pretty universal that they all wear Apple Watches, and so it
Yeah,
just
I,
kind of
I have my own theory about that, why that is. I'll get to it
because
when I
I
get
don't.
to my bit.
I think it's probably because in some cases they aren't really supposed to have a phone on them, and so they at least have their ability
Yeah.
to get notifications like that.
That's what it is basically. You know, you don't
Okay.
want to be staring at your phone. You can use your smartwatch basically for notifications, screening. This buzzes, that buzzes. Okay, it's just a rubbish this. I don't need to look at it. Oh no, this is something I do need to pay attention to. Um
Yeah. And I
so
have
I
seen them
did.
do it for, if they're doing taking a pulse, maybe looking at the seconds, and I mean, so it's not like it doesn't have any practical purpose, but it's kind of funny, and I think that's more of a um, cliquish kind of thing where there's enough people that have them that you sort of think if you're in that field and everyone's wearing them, then it's kind of like, well, I guess maybe yeah, I'll get one too. Like, um, so anyway, so the other thing is that I have always worn sort of, I have gone towards digital watches simply because I like having the ability to have a timer or an alarm or something on my wrist. Like my watch is more than just telling time. Like I want to be able to, there's still time based things, but I want to be able to have those extra features. The other thing was I tend to miss alerts on my phone a lot. And then if I'm out of the house, my wife might, worry about me or she hasn't heard from me. And she's like, I've been sending you messages. Why aren't you paying attention to me? And it's like, oh, I guess I'm not hearing them or something. Whereas, having it vibrate on your wrist is very, it's kind of hard not to notice it. Although I've noticed that if my wrist is in the right position, I can't quite feel it as strongly. But for the most part, as things come through, I am getting the notifications. The thing about the Pine Time, I mean, it's so inexpensive that if you've never had a smartwatch like me, it was a great way to sort of test the waters and say, is this something that makes any sense for me? It does have some very light, um, fitness type stuff, which is it has a heart rate monitor. You can do it does step tracking and sort of distance tracking. Um, the thing that is in terms of having it for a couple weeks now, the hardware itself, so the watch itself and the Infinitime system that comes on it, works really well for what it is. The battery life is ridiculously good. It lasts an entire week for me. I've only charged it twice the entire time I've had it. Um, and it charges
Yeah,
in
that's
like
the
half an
big.
hour.
That's the biggest thing. And I'll get to that when I get to my bit. But you know, um, these things aren't worth anything if they're not charged.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's that's one of the things that's kept me from using them is because the needing to be diligent about charging them. Although I charge my phone, so it's not like, but the idea that I have to take it off and put it on a charger versus a phone where it's not attached to me. I can set it down and still even pick it up and use it whenever it's on a corded charger. So that the battery life on a lot of them, and I know what you're going to say is that a lot of them is nowhere near that good, but
Junk.
Yeah, exactly. So, but of course you have to balance, battery versus, the internals and how much you get from it and the screen and all of that. But this is, in terms of just a basic, simple watch, I think it's very attractive in terms of like the profile of it. The size of it is really good for me. I don't like a gigantic watch, so it fits my wrist very well. It sits right on top. It's low profile. I like that it's very simple, that it has three different brightness levels, and I can, in the evening I can turn it down, or if I'm outside, I can turn it up. And I mean, it just, everything it does from a hardware standpoint, from the watch itself, is really, really good. Now, where I don't think it's very good is the software that you have to use. You have a couple different choices, but for the most part, you're going to use Gadget Bridge, which is really a confusing mess of a UI. And I'm sorry if anyone from Gadget Bridge hears this, but it's a mess. It's like, I mean, I don't know what these graphs are supposed to be. Like this dial showing activity, and like it's so confusing to me. I don't know what visual paradigm they're supposed to be invoking here. Um, but it does track steps, it does track heart rate, it does track activities, but not consistently. Like some days I feel like it does a really good job of showing me blocks of time where I was active, where I was doing things. It shows a corresponding heart rate that went along with it, steps, distance, stuff like that. And then other times it just doesn't seem like it collects anything. And I'm like, okay, well, I know I've been just as active today as I was the previous day. So, Gadget Bridge, you know, if
You were
this
a
is
ghost those days, Eric.
apparently. So, and I just, it's, it's been like a bit of black magic to get Gadget Bridge working at all. At first, it wouldn't even pair. I had to like fight it for like the entire day to sort of figure out like how to get it to even work. And so, unfortunately, because it's so inexpensive, and I get this, the money has gone into the hardware. Almost none of it has gone into the software. Infinitime is fine in terms of the operating system on the watch itself, but you know sometimes getting the right alerts to show or to feed through from the phone to the watch does not work very well. There's just certain things that you need the corresponding software on the device for it to make sense, and that's kind of where the Pine Time falls down, I think, compared to I have to assume something like an Apple Watch or a Samsung Watch or Pixel Watch or any of these like more professional solutions where there's a software and hardware sort of meshing together to make it a better experience.
Okay.
So,
A couple things I want to mention. Other things that you can use your smartwatch for. Some smartwatches will actually work as a phone. So if you don't want to bring your phone, you can use your smartwatch. And some that means that they will also connect to like a Bluetooth headset. And you can also put audio on them. So if you're going jogging or something and you don't want to carry your phone and have it bumping against your leg or whatever
yeah.
while you're out jogging, then you can just use your phone for that. So and also
Yeah,
like
and you can even get its own SIM cards and its own cellular
Yes.
connectivity, can't you?
yeah, or eSIM.
Oh, okay.
Some of them are eSIM because like T-Mobile or any other carrier like that, once you kind of stuck with them, so they sell package deals with phones where it's locked into them through an eSIM. So and like mine, real quick, I can view my heart rate, see how much battery power I have left, which I'm at 4%. Wow. See how many steps I've already taken for the day, see the weather, and then I can pause and play whatever audio I have going through my system at the time. So if I don't want to reach up here or reach up here, depending on what headset I'm wearing, I can just, click, click, and pause my music or play my music or whatever, or audio book that I'm listening.
So I have used a lot of smartwatches. I don't need them, obviously. Like a lot of technology, do you need? But it's something that I have tried to get into for a long time now, actually. And if I start thinking about it, I think the first ever device I bought was a Galaxy Watch 2. This was when they, first moved to the circular dial rather than the kind of, I think their first one, the Gear, Galaxy Gear or whatever, was squarish. But anyway, and I've had, I've had a couple of Samsung watches. I've had quite a few Tick watches, which are Mobvoi, which run Android Wear OS, or whatever it's called at its different times. It's had different rebrandings: Android Wear OS, whatever. And now I'm on to the OnePlus watch, and the thing that if I was to make a summary of the 6 or 7 different watches that I've taken, the most important thing for me has been battery life. When the Galaxy watches will run Android, their battery life is the same as a phone. You have to charge it every day. There was that period where Galaxy watches were actually running Tizen rather than Wear OS, and when they were running that, their battery life was much better, 2, 3, 4 days. They also had the thing of the rotating bezel, which you could use for selecting and
The
this
S3
that.
Frontier.
Yeah. And they kept that they kept that going even if you didn't actually have a physical rotating bezel. They often had like a capacitive rotating one, like the old iPods used to be. And I found them useful for mainly for notification screening. So, your phone buzzes all the time. Most of us now have stopped even having our phones loud. We just have them on silent because they're always buzzing with WhatsApps or telegrams or this email or that and the other. And, we get like notification overload. And especially when I'm working, in the clinical scenario, I don't want to be looking at my phone every 2 minutes to figure, is this actually a relevant message or relevant notification? Just being able to see it quickly on your phone, on your wrist, to say, okay, that's something I can ignore. Oh no, this is something I need to sort out now, or this is something, or whatever it might be. And so that's what I've kind of always used it for. Now, it does come in handy for other things like, at the gym, timing workouts, um, being able to change media when you're on a run or something like that without having to get your phone out. But I only use them if they're charged. Obviously, you can't use one of these things when they're not charged. And so the problem I always had was that when Samsung went back to using Wear OS again, the battery life was like a phone. You had to charge it every night, and inevitably I'd forget. Inevitably in the morning I'd put it on, and it's dead. And then I'm like, oh, okay, fine, all right, I'm just gonna leave it. And so I just wouldn't be wearing them. I just wouldn't be wearing it. The Tick watches were good in this regard because they ran Wear OS. They weren't as premium, but they were a lot more rugged. They were waterproof and things that and the other. And they had this dual screen. So you had the smartwatch screen, and then you had this LCD screen, which just basically told you the time and how many steps, or if you had any notifications. This meant that the battery life was epic. I mean, I would charge it once a week. And I really enjoyed having them, but they were a bit underpowered. And lately, with Google giving Samsung preferential treatment, they were getting. It was very slow for them getting the new Wear OS upgrades. They always felt like a bit like a second class citizen, because the history is that Google basically paid Samsung a lot of money to stop with their Tizen watches and come back to Wear OS. And part of that was an exclusivity thing where they would always get the OSs first and be optimized for their devices first and all this kind of stuff, which really did lead to a lot of other players like Fossil Group and whatever just basically just exiting the market because it wasn't worth their while doing it. I mean, I remember recently my trip to Morocco. I had a Tick watch there. I didn't even bother taking my charger. It just wasn't required, you know. Um, but I was always a bit worried about the fact that, yeah, they were kind of felt like second class citizens. Recently, I'm talking about 3, 4 months ago, I bought a OnePlus Watch 2. The first watch was apparently not very good. I never really saw it, but it wasn't that great apparently. This watch is an Android Wear watch. Has all, you can get the Play Store and all the different apps and all that sort of stuff. But it also has epic battery life. And the way that this has epic battery life is that it actually has two operating systems running on it. You've got Wear OS, and then you've also got this real time um, OS kind of homebrew type thing, which requires a lot less power, requires a lot less charging and whatever. And so, therefore, I can now have my OnePlus Watch, and I can charge it maybe once every 3, 4 days, and it fast charges as well. You put it up on the puck, half an hour later, maybe 45 minutes later, you're almost fully charged. And I think when you then wear it for longer and longer and longer, then you find more and more uses for it. So I did find it useful for tracking my sleep, especially, since I was traveling and, I wanted to try and get, I didn't want to be jet lagged and all this kind of stuff. And it was reasonably useful for that, actually. It's reasonably useful for timing my workouts and, following them. I mean, the companion software isn't as good as Samsung's companion software. They've got, was it S Health or whatever. OnePlus have got O Health or something like that. It's not as good, but it's pretty decent. And so I think that's what it comes down to. If the device doesn't require, charging every night or whatever, and you need to another thing you need to charge, then you're going to use it more, and the more you use it, the more uses you find for it, and then it becomes more and more, I wouldn't say indispensable, but it becomes more and more important to your workflow, your lifestyle, or whatever. Like if I turn up to the gym now and I'm not wearing my smartwatch, I'm like, oh shit, okay, how am I going to time all my workouts? I mean, it's very easy to, I just get my phone out, but it's just, it's become something I've got used to. Similarly, if I'm at work and I haven't got my smartwatch, I'm like, okay, my phone's buzzing. Okay, now is it worth me actually checking what that is or not? Most likely it's not going to be anything, but sometimes it is. Sometimes, for example, I've looked and the phone's ringing and I look and it's like, what's my daughter's school? Shit, what the hell's going on here? I better talk, because why would my daughter's school ring me during the middle of the day? Normally there's a problem, etc. So, so at the moment, that's where I've come to when it comes to wearables. Don't charge that. It doesn't need charging that often, then it's good. If it needs charging all the time, the Samsung watches are the best screens. They were beautiful AMOLED screens, but what was the point? Because half the time you put them on, they bloody died in 2 minutes because you hadn't charged it. And I remember finding that the charging pad that they had was really temperamental. It would often slip off, and even if you did put it on the charger, you'd come in the morning and it's like, oh, it slipped off and hasn't charged at all. Now I know they do the reverse wireless charging that you can do with the S24 Ultra and stuff like that, but that's incredibly slow charging. you know
Well, I will say that with like my S5 watch, the battery is 4 or 5 days.
Good.
Well, can I get my 10 cents in here?
Yes, I think it's time. 10, put 20 cents in, Moss.
All right. The inflation. Yeah. Well, I know I'm among the last to adopt new tech. I've had a few smartwatches purchased from wish.com that were too loud, too intrusive, and just too much. Plus, they didn't work all that well. They only worked with certain super popular apps, none of which I use because I'm that kind of guy. But when I saw I could get a Pine Time for $25 plus shipping, about the same price as a cheap watch on Wish, I was hooked. I've been lusting over the entire Pine 64 catalog for years and have managed to acquire a Pine Tab 2, which I've talked about. I eventually received my Pine Time on July 9th. I set it up on its charger until it was fully charged. It had the wrong time. I downloaded F-Droid and Gadget Bridge. I don't think I got all the settings changed as suggested, but hit the wall. It does not connect to my phone, still had the wrong time. I posted for help to the Pine Time channel on Discord. I didn't get a whole lot of help from them, but I kept looking around.
My phone said the Pine Time is connected, but the Gadget Bridge app does not, and says I have an app notification setting to change, which I can't get changed. The setting was ghosted on me. I was unable to fix that. So on the 10th of July, I tried connecting it to my desktop computer. I downloaded a copy of Siglo and ran it. They don't just use Gadget Bridge. There are 4 or 5 different programs you could use. And Siglo worked on my computer. And success. I got to update the firmware from the original 1.0.0 to 1.9.0, which was stupid of me, but I'll talk about that in a second. I set the time and changed some of the other settings. I discovered then that 1.10 was not an upgrade of 1.1, but rather came after 1.9, which meant that I could have gone as high as 1.14.0. I tried downloading and installing that many, many, many times, but it did not want to see it as a file. And perhaps if I downgraded it back to 1.0 and then tried, it might have worked, but I didn't go there. After enjoying, and I mean really enjoying, my Pine Time for 5 weeks, it stopped working. The intrusion level was near zero. The things I got to worked really well. It would read the apps I use rather than expecting to use certain apps, and it feels very Linuxy. I had not been able to determine whether the problem is with the watch or the charger. I think it's a charger, I really do. Moving forward, I note that Siglo is now using a discontinued version of GTK, so I hope they update that soon. And after beating my head against the wall and sending in comments to Pine64 and all over the Pine64 Discord, on September 3rd, I was surprised by an email from Pine64 offering me an RMA to send the Pine Time back to them. It has a 14-day return policy and a 30-day warranty, and I started having the problems at 5 weeks, so it was out of warranty. I understood that, and I was pretty dismal about it because there's no way I could have talked my wife into getting another watch just to find out what worked and what didn't, or even getting a new charger to find out if that was the problem. So, on the 3rd, I did get the RMA. I mailed it back to them on the 4th. I hope to get another watch soon. It hasn't happened yet. I wonder whether my email tagline showing all my Linux podcasts had any effect on them making the offer. I will have more when I get a response from Pine64. I expect to do a quickie HPR episode on my experience. Hopefully it'll sound better than that just did. And that's about all I got right now.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So, unless anybody's got any other things they want to mention about wearables, shall we move on?
I'm surprised you didn't talk more about earbuds.
Now, here's a question. Well, okay, the reason I didn't talk about earbuds for 2 reasons. One, I'm not sure if they class in the same way as wearables. That's just me. It's my personal thing, right? Because yes, I know you wear them, but they're not. You don't use them for. There's no fashion set.
Speaker, yeah.
Yeah, it's just a Bluetooth speaker in your ear. Number one.
Well,
and there's not a huge amount. I mean, I know some of them have Google Assistant and all this kind of stuff, but really, there isn't a huge amount else you can do with them. Secondly, it could actually be an in of itself. Because if we are going to go into headphones, there's a lot to talk about.
well, no, I was just going to talk about some of the smart aspects of it. You already mentioned like assistants that you can put on there. Some of my headsets will even do Alexa, things like that. But you know, just the reading the numbers off to me when somebody calls, that's kind of nice. Now, I never liked the whole reading me my text messages thing because of how slow that is.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is a thing that you can make some headsets do as well, which prevents you even from having to turn your wrist and look at your watch if you something else. So, just
I
something
mean,
to think about.
I mean, I know that the Sony ones had Google Assistant and Amazon Alexa baked in.
I have
The
Sony,
new
I have a Sony headset that has Alexa baked.
yeah, the new, well, I say new, the Nothing earbuds, the latest versions of them actually have Chat GPT, so you can use Chat GPT as your assistant. Now, I have got some Nothing Actually, I've got quite a few nothing earbuds actually, and I've got a nothing phone as well. So I have tried using it,
You,
but
sir,
it's
need to
very
mail me a
slow.
package.
I can, yes, go ahead. I have a theory, but on a complete other tangent, I have a theory that nothing is going to be. A lot of the stuff is very, they don't make a huge number of things. I reckon in a couple of years' time, these things will be worth some money. That's part of the reason why I buy.
Well, I'm just saying that if you have a bunch of headsets, earbuds, phones, whatever that you don't want, put a package together. Tell me how much it is to ship it.
Okay, I will do that. I will do that. I have no idea what shipping is like to America. I can't imagine it being cheap, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Why not? Back to ChatGPT. So yes, you can, but it's really slow, and as it is, ChatGPT isn't the quickest thing in the world because obviously it's scouring the internet mainly for answers and stuff like that. So yeah, I suppose those things do exist. I actually found them more annoying, personally. I'm listening to some music and then suddenly, it stops because you are getting a phone call from X or whatever. I used to find it a little more annoying rather than useful. So I actually used to stop those, and then the Google wake word or the Alexa wake word would always, kind of set off very
Yeah.
easily, and
No,
so I would end up just disabling that. Maybe I need to give it a bit more time and maybe try
no.
using it a bit more, or I don't know.
Notifications do get annoying, especially if there's like a group text or something and you get like
Yes.
15 people coming and you're
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
listen to a book or, a song or something and it just
Definitely.
beep, stop. But you can change your ducking or you can put your phone on vibrate and that should no longer impact your audio. There are ways around.
Cool. I mean, do you find a lot of those kind of extra features useful?
I have in the past. I don't play with them as much now, mostly because my phone's on vibrate all the time. Because yeah, and now Samsung used to have a thing where if you had a headset on and you were on vibrate, the audio notification would still go through your headset, and
Yes.
that was helpful when they were doing that.
Yeah. So that is true. I've noticed that with the Galaxy Buds FE that I've got, they do that.
Yeah, it,
You know.
I find that helpful. And the ducking is great. So my audio can continue, and then there will just be my notification sound in the background.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
Moss is telling us to hurry the heck up because
Okay.
he's done sitting in his chair.
Yeah. He's getting a deep vein thrombosis listening to us. Anyway, all right. I think we have, as I said, headphones would actually be a good illness for the future. So if you're interested in that, do let us know, dear listener. Anyway, moving on to vibrations from the ether. Well, there isn't any vibrations from the ether, really. I mean, this might be because of the fact that we had to postpone last week's show to this week because I was flying and other people, and Eric was like half dead, and Joe was working, and etc. etc.
Which will likely make next week's episode short.
Yes, but yes, so that's that.
We need a
Uh,
topic.
yeah, headphones. I'm just saying it flows on from this week, doesn't it? But hey, it's a democracy, so I'll go with whatever the
I think there's
the
been an
herd decides.
interesting progression of Apple doing away with the jack on a device. So going from the ability to have wired to then kind of being forced to go to wireless, and then the progression from for my own personal case, like being so resentful of it because all the other smartphone manufacturers went along with it,
Yeah.
to now not even caring because I'm so much happier having
They weren't the
Bluetooth
first.
earbud.
Yeah,
They were
I
not the
mean,
first.
I'll tell you
No,
now. I'll tell you something interesting, which is that I'm sure you guys have noticed this as well. I noticed this in India. The cheaper the phone, the more likely it will have a headphone jack. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a memory card slot as well, actually. And so I would see Yeah, I mean, I remember going to some of the stores, and the budget ones always had headphone jacks, and the premium ones didn't. And the reason for that, as far as I could see, was purely financial. If you are, you know, buying a budget phone because you haven't got a huge amount of money, you're not going to want to then spend even more money on some Bluetooth earbuds. If you can
So
put
then,
some wired ones in for no, zilch money, then that works. Now, if you're on the other hand, you've got enough money to get a premium smartphone, whether it's from Apple or Samsung or whatever, you've probably got enough money to get, I don't know, some Galaxy Buds or some AirPods or whatever. And it's interesting that there's actually more choice at the budget end than at the senior end. And
mhm,
similarly, the
mhm.
micro SD, the micro, I know this isn't necessarily to do with wearables, but the fact that the cheaper ones had micro SD card slots was because all of those were just one SKU. They would all be 128 gig versions, and then provided your own storage. Whilst if you're a premium, you can pay for more. But anyway, that was that was
It,
a tangent, and so I'm going to stop there.
a half
Um,
tangent off of that just for a second. If you go to Temu and look for Lenovo earbuds, you will find at least 100 different models for 25 bucks or less. And I don't know why Lenovo makes so bloody many models of earbuds.
but okay, but again, in India, for example, 25 bucks is a decent amount of cash. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
if you've
no doubt.
got a wired 3.5 headphone that you got for maybe the equivalent of $2, then it's a no-brainer,
Mhm.
isn't it?
Well, the ones I got were only $4.95, so
Fair enough, I suppose. Fair enough. Anyway, moving on to check this out. Moss, you have something. Go on.
I do. I was listening to Hacker Public Radio's episode 4194 and learned that ext file systems reserve 5% of each drive for the root user. 5% of your drive might be 50 megabytes or more. If you want to reclaim this space for your use, you first run df tick h to identify your drives, and then sudo tune2fs tick m1 and then /dev/sda, whatever the drive number you want to use. And if you use like the tick M1 I mentioned, that makes it 1%. You can use 2 for 2%, 3 for 3%. Anyway, you're reclaiming some more of your drive. That 5% of your drive that ext wants to save for a root user that you never get access to anyhow.
Good stuff. So that's actually a vaguely useful check this out for a change, rather than my usual rubbishness. Okay, it's housekeeping and announcements. Thank you for listening to this episode of mintCast. If you see something you'd like to hear about, tell us. Send us an email at mintcast@mintcast.org. Join us live on YouTube, post at the Mintcast subreddit, chat with us on Telegram and Discord, or post directly on the website mintcast.org. Our next episode will be 2 p.m. US Central Time, Sunday, September 15th, 2024, and there's a link to get that converted to your time zone in the show notes. The next roundtable live stream will be at 2 p.m. US Central Time on Saturday, September 21st, 2024, and there's a link to get that converted to your time zone in the show notes. Live stream information is at mintcast.org/livestream. Wrapping up, Joe.
Well, if you like the sound of my voice, I'm on a couple of other podcasts, which I've already plugged in the show. I'm on Tilts, the Linux Link Tech Show, which is at tllts.org. I'm on Linux Plugcast, which is and you can send me an email directly, jb@mintcast.org, or buy me a coffee with Kofi. And you can also catch me on this last week's OTC. Boss.
Well, you can hear me every week at Full Circle Weekly News. You can email me at moss@bodhilinux.com. My Mastodon is at zybla@hosttux.social, and occasionally I'll even do an HPR episode. Bill's not here, so Majid, tell us about Bill.
Yeah, so Bill's not here, but you can email him on bill@mintcast.org. You can get him on bill_h on Discord. You can get him on at wchauser3 at fossidon.org on Mastodon. You can also check out his other two podcasts, Linux OTC and Three Fat Truckers. When it comes to me, Majid, you can email me directly at drmajid@mintcast.org. You can get me on Mastodon at atypical_doctor at mastodon.social. I'm Atypical Doctor on Instagram and Threads, and there's the Atypical Doctor podcast on Spotify, and also I am on Linux OTC. Eric.
You can hear me and see me on Distro Hoppers Digest, as well as Linux OTC podcasts and Linux Saloon and the Linux Lugcast streams. And if you want to reach out to me, I'm at eric@mintcast.org.
Now, of course, before we leave, we wanted to make sure we acknowledge some of the people who make mintCast possible. Bill for our audio editing, archive.org for hosting our audio files, Hubstar for our logo, Unedited for the animated Discord logo, Londoner for our time syncs and various other contributions without which this podcast would fall apart.
Thanks, Londoner.
Yeah. Bill again. Yeah, I swear he puts his name in twice on purpose. For hosting the server, which runs our website maintenance, and the Nextcloud server, on which we host our show notes and raw audio. And of course, the Linux Mint development team for the fine distro we love to talk about. Thanks, Clem. And Co.
And Co.
And that's a wrap.
Wrap it up.
Good show, lads.
17.
What number is this again? 444.
445.
445. Right.
I'm going to stop the stream. Give me a second.
Mm-hmm.
And the stream. And all right.